Hi, thanks for coming and checking out my leadership practicum reflection. Again, my name is Brice Matthews, and I chose to do my practicum on my experience in the Hall Director Search Committee here at Minnesota State University, Mankato. A little bit about me again, and kind of how I landed on this practicum idea is I did my undergrad at Northern Michigan University. I have a degree in secondary ed social studies. After student teaching, I kind of realized that wanted to still be in the education field, but I enjoyed kind of what I'd consider kind of real world education or life education rather than the academic side of things. And so I had some experience in res life as an undergrad staff member and really wanted to kind of explore that more and work in the student affairs realm in higher ed. Had the opportunity to be a full-time hall director right at undergrad at Fort Lewis College out in Durango, Colorado. And then kind of a first opportunity that I got to come back to the Midwest and come back closer to home. I did that and came to Mankato to work for the res life department. Through that, had the awesome opportunity of being able to pursue a graduate degree, and that's why I'm in the EdLd leadership program. Some leadership and professional goals. I kind of want to quote unquote climb the ladder in residential life. At this point, I talk about the pipe dream someday would be either a president of a very small college or be a VP or director of a department at a mid or bigger school. And so this practicum really kind of lends that to that. I was able to serve on the search committee within our department, learn some of hiring practices at Mankato, as well as maybe learn some best practices along the way too, because I hope at some point I would be in a position to be making final hiring decisions on professional staff members. So the who's, the what's, the where's, and the when's of my practicum is I was on the search committee to hire new hall directors for the 2014-2015 academic year. As a committee, we met to hire two folks for our two openings. Who was involved in this? Numerous stakeholders. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Committee members who were made up of staff members within our department, as well as a representative from our bargaining unit or our union staff, as well as a representative from institutional diversity, and also worked obviously with the applicants themselves for the positions. The where, this mostly took place at Minnesota State University at Mankato's main campus, and this really kind of progressed over the course of the entire spring semester, kind of ramping up towards the end of this practicum experience, with some more time frame. With that, we would meet pretty regularly every couple weeks for an hour or two, in January and February, and then when March and April hit, we spent a lot of time talking with applicants, meeting with applicants, interviewing applicants, doing reference checks, as well as hosting some of the finalists on campus too. So the process. In this we had qualification meetings, and so we kind of went over our preferred qualifications, our basic qualifications, and decided as a committee what things we could anticipate our applicant pool having on their resume, and trying to identify what things met or what things did not meet that. Then once that was kind of done, then we started the application review process. At this point, we looked to see what candidates met our qualifications, and then of those who met our qualifications, which we were wanting to talk to more. And through that, it was really interesting to see the different styles and different types of resumes that our applicants would submit. I think I learned a lot, for my own resume through that process, being able to identify maybe some things that I want to either add or edit to my own resume, or things that I know I want to leave off of my resume. After the application review process, we kind of identified a number of people we wanted to talk to further, and then did screening interviews. Some of these interviews happened over the phone, and then some of them happened at placement exchanges, or they're basically just big job conferences. And I had the opportunity to represent our department at the placement exchange, and this year is in Baltimore, Maryland, where we interviewed a number of candidates there, for our hall director position. And so that was a really, really cool opportunity to be a part of that. It's something that I hope to in the future go to that exchange as a candidate, to, looking for a job. And so being able to do that on the other side of the table, prior to doing that, I think will help me in the long run. After that, after looking at the screening interviews, then we identified a list of finalists that we wanted to pursue. Through that, we did reference checks. So me and another committee member would call reference for each of our finalists and ask them questions and find out the strengths and weaknesses of that particular candidate. And then with those finalists, we invited them to campus. And so over the course of, I believe, a week, we had five finalists on campus. And so because I was on the search committee, I was obviously part of the search committee interview itself, as well as I participated in a lot of other kind of informal parts, either picking the candidate up from the hotel, going to meals with the candidate, either lunch or dinner. And so that was kind of a good opportunity to get to know that person in kind of like an informal setting versus the formal setting of the interview. And then after that's all done, then we met as a committee, actually a couple weeks ago, or last week, to put together a committee recommendation for hiring. The interesting thing that I find in search committees is we can make recommendations, but typically the department head has the final say in hiring. And so while we may recommend our one or two candidates, that director could go along with that recommendation, or they may change that recommendation, and that that's something that's not really in our control. So now a little bit of reflection. During this, I learned a whole lot, that I feel like I'll be able to use in my positions in the future, as far as hiring and search processes, and what some HR policies are, and then what some best practices may be as well. Such as at some of the placement exchanges that we attended, Minnesota State University Mankato, we only like to interview folks who have actually submitted an entire application. Most institutions around the country don't really operate that at these placement exchanges. They'll talk to really anyone and everyone that they feel is kind of remotely qualified for their position. And so I think that really sometimes limits us as an institution in trying to find some qualified candidates at times, because when everyone else is able to talk with institutions without actually going through the entire application process, they're able to find out where they want to devote their time when applying for positions. And so if I ever get into more of a position of authority, something that I would really advocate for through the HR department to allow some flexibility and at a lot of these job conferences. I think one of the most important things that I learned throughout this was the importance of incorporating the needs and desires of all the stakeholders that are involved. One of the things we did as a department is we asked everyone at all the different levels as far as what were some qualities that they wanted to see in the hall directors that we ended up hiring. And in that, it was very clear, that each individual had their own qualities that they were looking for, but there are definitely some qualities that me as a hall director and the peers of these new hall directors had versus the people who were supervising these hall directors, and then the supervisor, like what they were looking for. And so it was our job as a search committee to try to look at all those needs and try to meet those needs as best as possible. And I feel like that was I think that juggling act was the most valuable thing to me in this whole process. Through this practicum, I really looked to see how I could incorporate some of the things I learned in my LPI results. And since this practicum was really, it wasn't really focused directly on me, and so the thing that I was able to come up with is in the questions that I asked the candidates in the search committee interviews, were tailored to some of those things, like encouraging the heart and challenging the process were kind of two areas that I really wanted to ask the candidates about. And I feel like I got to know them a little bit more in those areas of leadership through that. So that was really useful too, because I don't think before the LPI, I don't think I would have been able to craft some of the questions that I did for the search committee interview. So the results of this whole search committee process, if everything went accordingly, we should have actually made some verbal offers either Friday or today on Monday. And so we're just kind of waiting to hear a response from them. And so hopefully by the end of this week, the search will be successful, and we would have fulfilled our two positions. So. And that's pretty much it for what I have for my practicum. If people have questions, feel free to respond in the D2L. Thanks. Bye.